Good evening. So, set 3 previews have begun, and the first cards we have gotten for set 3 proper, aside from the oddball regional promos, has been Eraserhead, the Eraserhead starter deck, and the 18 cards that will be in it. I decided to wait until they were all out to go ahead and do a recap video. It makes it a lot easier to sort of know what the full kit looks like, to get an idea of how to judge cards based off of each other. Just so you're not doing a bunch of guesswork with like half pieces and like, oh, okay, this kit does have such and such, you find out later. So yeah, all 18 cards, so this is going to be a little bit longer than some of the other ones, but as usual, I'm just going to go through each card a little bit quickly, kind of talk about how impactful I think they'll be or not be, and kind of give a rough 1 to 5 score, not like a super serious specific score, but kind of just on expected impact. Like, you know, a 1 is an absolute coaster, a 5 is a card that is going to be sort of, you know, really deck defining. I think it'll be like a centerpiece of decks that are significant in the meta kind of card. And then everywhere in between, you know, a 2 is sort of a piece that might show up in some super niche situations. A 4 is going to be a relevant card, and a 3 somewhere in between is going to have its spots, not be everywhere, but be kind of nice when it does show up. Roughly, very vaguely, and then for characters we'll do rough tiers. So yeah, just kicking it right off, we have Eraserhead Version 2. One thing to note here, his name is Eraserhead, so he is allowed to play Erase. That is still an important part of this character. Although he is not designed around always having it, you can put that card in your deck, and you will be able to shut off characters with it. With that in mind, you know, he gets this scaling enhance. You know, once again, I'm not going to read every card. I'm going to assume you have read them or can read them on the screen just to save time. But yeah, enhanced scaling offense. Later in the string, attacks get even faster. And it's kind of Giro-like, right? It is for each attack in your card pool. It's not for each card, so you don't quite get to do the staff strike thing exactly. But as your turn goes on, your attacks get faster and faster. You're only getting the speed portion, but you get some card draw off of it when they do block. So you have a little bit better of a poke game than a character like Giro has. And in the late game, you still have that ability to get through a wall, provided you find the damage. That ability is pretty good. You know, we've seen Giro sort of be permanent relevant on the basis of having scaling offense on her character. Eraser's not going to get quite the damage stats. He'll have to find those somewhere, but same rough idea. That should always be good. And his response, the defensive response, should also be pretty consistently good. It'll sort of depend on the meta and how key the enhances on certain attacks are. You know, if it's still a lot of frog lashing decks, that response commit is, you know, certainly very nice. It keeps the big damage off of 1.3, kind of bails you out of certain attacks, you home run comet and so on. In addition to being able to stop statics, there will usually be something, at least from what we see right now, that is shutting down that is really good. So, you know, instead of the comparison to Giro's is in my head a lot. That response is certainly better than the peaks, almost for certain, as useful as it can be for Giro at times. So yeah, I think it's really hard for this guy not to be bare minimum B tier, I think. Whether or not his A tier is going to sort of depend on the meta, depend on the speed of things. If you're getting into longer games where you'll be able to craft your hands to set up the 6 attack strings, then he should be better. If it's a little bit more aggressive and the aggro decks are more character driven and not so much, oh, I need this ability on this attack driven, then, you know, maybe a little bit weaker, but it's hard to imagine him being bad. So I'm going to go ahead and put a B here up on the top right. And then for us, these were going to be number grades 1 to 5. Aerial drop. So this is the first of many. Pretty much all of his attacks are combo attacks. I think every single one is. This one's got in the interesting enhance. I think trading a momentum for stun 2 is a pretty good rate, one that I'm usually happy to play. So if your deck needs momentum outlets, you might play it for that. You might play it for its stats. You know, the combo enhance, a 3 high 6 is fine on a 4-3. Everything about this card is just kind of okay, and your deck might play it if it needs its keywords. You know, if it needs a high attack, it needs a momentum out there. There's lots of like little boxes this might check, but it's probably never going to be like the first attack in your lineup, or really a super driving force. It's going to be like almost like Binding Kick now, where it's that last piece you sort of fit and you're like, yeah, this could be pretty good, and it'll do some work for you. I don't know how much we'll see it, but I don't think it's like crazy niche. I think we'll see it here and there a little bit. It's kind of just going to depend on the full slate of attacks on these symbols and cards on these symbols where they look with block zones and stuff. I'm going to give it a 3 for now. I think this card's fine. The Dropkick. Yeah, 8 damage. It is a costly 8 damage. 4 high for 8 if you discard the card. It is a kick, but it's a combo weapon, so you can't really fold it into kick lineups very easily, because there aren't really any other kick weapons besides Dropkick Slicer. Maybe there are more in the set or something. But yeah, 4 high 8, obviously a very attractive rate for a 4/3. I think you'll see this more often in these combo attack lineups, sort of depending on specifics. The card is costly. It's a little hard to 4x it, but I think we're going to see a lot of this card probably. At least provided this lineup is seeing play. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4. It's going to be kind of a bread and butter, I think. Binding Cloth Precision. So if you're hitting the requirements and playing at 3rd or 5th, you're obviously getting a very nice rate for your 3 difficulty. However, at the end of the day, you are kind of just getting stats plus... And the combo enhance matters, like peeking your top of your deck and maybe replacing it is certainly not a bad ability. It's going to help you extend those strings. You play this 3rd, try to make sure there's not a 3 on top, get that 4th attack off. That's sort of your real big one. So, again, a lot of these attacks feel like, this is going to be a package, almost like the Kicks package or the Punch package, where you're playing a lot of these attacks together, and I haven't sat down with a deck list just like, okay, well, if I'm making a 20 attack lineup out of just these, which are the ones I'm actually playing? And this will be a popular... It's really flashy. You're getting a lot of numbers for 3 difficulty. It's hard to guess at whether or not... we already have the Dropkick being a 4 diff that's just stats, and there's some other attacks in here they're playing just for stats, and it's going to be hard to compare. Do you want just stats? Do you want the abilities? I think this will be in a lot of decks at first and sort of find its way out of decks over time. Overall, I'm gonna give it a 3. It's gonna have its places. It's gonna be a role player. I don't think it's gonna be in all of the decks that are running this package. Whiplash, however, probably will be. At least if you're a Eraserhead, if you're definitely looking for the really long strings, having an attack that takes itself out of progressive is pretty good. This is the sort of deck that would almost consider playing the Crow and Frog, even though it's just a blank 4 high 5 non-prog, but the keywords don't allow it to fit in. Whiplash gives you something where the keywords fit in, and you can play it as your second move in a 4 diff 2 low 5s, not as awkward of a rate as a 5 diff 4 high 5. Still kind of an okay block, but it's hard to imagine decks with this lineup not including this card, at least if they're going for that long string scaling. So we're going to give this a 4 out of 5. Shoulder Rush. This card's a sneaky good rate. It is a 5 difficulty. You might just decide your deck's not running 5 difficulties at all if you're doing this combo theme. But if you're going to run one, it's probably going to be this one. It is effectively a 4 difficulty if you're using the combo enhance. It's pseudo 4 difficulty if your -1 difficulty pays you off somehow, right? If you check a 3A on your attack after this, or if you're playing this a little bit later in the string. If you're doing both of those things, it can be a pseudo quote-unquote 3 diff. So this is kind of what I was talking about with the precision, is that you can have this pseudo 3 diff in your deck that also has good stats, and doesn't have as many strings attached to it. So it'll be interesting to see how much play this sees or doesn't see. I think this is similar precision. I think some decks will try it and like it, some decks will just leave it out. But I think this is also a solid 3. Eraserhead, this is probably the worst attack in this lineup. Obviously, I love Sealing Foundations. You figure if you don't have to hit a release with this, you're probably hitting a 2 diff and getting this as a 4 mid 5, but a 5 difficulty combo is a lot for that. It has the damage on it. If you're really pressed for damage, maybe this finds it in, but you need to feel, I think, really good about your ability to pass checks to be, playing effectively utility 5 diff. Utility 5 difficulty cards are pretty tricky to fit into decks, especially if you're trying to do long strings, and especially if they're combo utility 5 diffs. It's just a lot to ask. I could see this getting 1x'd in some places to fill in sort of a last attack slot. Has the low block on it, but not much more than that. I'm going to give it a 2. That might be a little kind. It might actually be a coaster, but we'll go with a 2 for now. Round Pass Exhaust. This is going to see play not necessarily in this combo weapon lineup, but Kick decks are very happy to see this. It lets them get away from playing Electric Jolt if you're on the Order lineup. It gives the Void lineup something that lets it point at foundations, which Void actually doesn't have a ton of right now. And that combo hands of speed can't be reduced can be very handy. All around, just a good one, straight up. Hard to say too much bad about this. Pretty much a 4. I think most kick decks will be trying to include this for a little while and seeing good results off of it. And we get to Total Erase Your Binding. This is a 5. This is the payoff. This is the #1 reason to go in on this theme. The powerful 3 is certainly relevant. It is an off zone. It is overstatted at 4/3/4 high 5. Sealing 3 rival foundations is good. The trick is it is a double combo. You are probably still looking for the kill after this if you don't have the momentum for the powerful. You have to find the damage from something. Because sealing 3 foundations is usually what you want to start the turn with. If you're doing it on your 3rd attack, then you know you're really sort of late in the game going for a deep string. However, those are situations that happen, and those are situations where a lot of decks have struggled to close out games when the opponent gets a big stage built out and they have double rescue completed or whatever. It's, you know, it can be really hard to get through some of those defenses. So this is, you play this as your 3rd attack, and that's actually the middle of your string in a long game situation, and it seals some stuff for you, and you're finding damage from other places. Yeah, this is the driving force behind playing this lineup for sure. You know, in addition to Binding Cloth Capture, fitting in, maybe starting with the one most important seal on your string, or coming in later and sealing a 4th thing and making them discard. There's something here. This is sort of the centerpiece that makes this game plan a game plan that could be real. Acrobatic. Void, spam, 0 difficulty spam, 0 difficulty water spam with a decent block. There's a lot of water spams that are +3 high blocks. Yeah, kind of innocuous effect. It's a nice block. It's effectively a +1 block if you need to block a second thing, so it moves after it blocks. It triggers Amphibious if you're looking to do that, for what it's worth. If you want to be a water imp deck that has Amphibious but you're not Asui, this is one more thing besides Faith Shield that lets you trigger it. The Enhance is pretty weak so far as 0/5 spams go. We have better than Destroy -1 on things like Surviving the Final. So, you know, we'll see what's in the rest of the set. There may be other 0 difficulty spams on these symbols that are pushing it out of decks, but you can see it. It's fine. There also may be... I'll say this. People go wild about these 0 difficulty spams, what symbols have it, what symbols don't. For ones like this that aren't like crazy abilities, like it can't be fixed or whatever, you know, there's going to be more foundations in general to choose from. And you may see decks just happy to just play their 3 to 4x spam to get that 0 in the opening hand a decent chunk of the time instead of trying to get it every time, because it lets them run 3 more copies of that 2 diff that's really good. But there's going to be some actual competition for deck space that is going to make it a little hard to just lazily go like, oh, I have 12 0 diff spams I can play. We'll just play all of them. So it's going to get harder as time goes on, but I do think we'll see this here and there. And it'll be fine. Binding Cloth Mastery. This is the 4 check in the kit. This is a hard one to rate. The -1 damage is going to be sneaky good. The E-commit is fine. If you're playing the Shoulder Rush that can ready this card gets a lot more exciting, I think. It's actually probably specifically a combo that's designed to be in the starter, right? You play some move, you use this, you Shoulder Rush, you ready this, you use it again. I could see it in decks that are running that. It might be hard to warrant the 4 check otherwise, as nice as it is. Maybe as a 1x in, like, Momo could tutor for this, and you might run it to get that damage reduction on board or something like that. Yeah, probably pretty thin on play overall. It's not, like, bad. I just don't think it's going to earn too much deck space. So I'm gonna put a 2 on this. I think when it does show up, it'll feel pretty nice, though. Closing in, Combo tech, it's 2 speed. Pretty much going to be in every deck that's doing the combo speed, probably. You know, again, give or take. It's easy to say, oh, this just goes in lots of decks, and then you have to actually build a deck and cut cards from it. But yeah, good generic evergreen effect. We've seen the Punch and Fury versions of this card see lots of play and be useful, so no reason why this wouldn't be. It's got a nice block. Daunting Message. This is an interesting one. So, getting down below half your health. Obviously, the more health you have, if you're a 5-hander, you're more likely to play something like this. If you're a 7-hander, this might be a little bit harder. Flip to point commit is a good effect. I think this probably mostly sees play as a filler low block more than anything. If you need low blocks and you're kind of indifferent as to what your other spam foundations are doing, you might run some of this. Man, it's so hard because when a card like this card, you know, a point removal is the kind of effect that can just win a game, right? At the right time on the right target. So you can see if a deck is thin on it, or you're really struggling to fit irrefutables in because your 2-diff space is really competitive or whatever. This is the hardest one to rate. I'm going to put it at a 3 for now. I think it will see some play. It'll be good when it does. It might also not see very much play at all. It could be all over the place, sort of depends on the meta. What decks are popular, how much like gradual kill you over time there is versus one-turn blowouts, for instance. Dedicated Structure. I mean, people play Super Regeneration. This is an awfully specific one. This doesn't have the stats of the other keyword hate cards that would lead to it being main decked. And, you know, something weird would have to be going on if you're sideboarding this. If this is the best sideboard thing you can find against whatever range deck you're scared of, that seems pretty unlikely. So yeah, I just don't imagine this. Maybe if you know your local meta is just, you know, frogs everywhere or something, but I think competitively, you would need a very specific meta. It's obviously a good rate if it's going off, but like, it's a very meta only, and even then you might not run it kind of card. I will give it a 2 just because it's not like bad, but it's extremely niche. Dropping in from above is pretty good though. We've seen decks running Harden just to commit for 2 damage, especially you know, on Void in particular. And this has a nice other enhance on it that you sort of messes with your opponent's math. They don't get to just take the first attack, and depending on what you're doing, your deck might be really tempting to take that first attack. This has 2 symbols with Sero. It's pretty cool for him. It is a deck where that stands out in the Sero 1 right now. And obviously Eraserhead. You know, if you want to poke with an attack, they block it so you draw the card, even if you're not doing a real turn. Gives you that attack later. High attack total erasure binding is a high attack. I think this card will show up more than you would expect. Sort of just a damage foundation to show up, because people have been playing just the damage foundations and characters that need to get there. I don't know if it'll be like everywhere, but I think that this is a solid 3 of a card. This is a 2 low high block on water too. Water needs those. We'll see if it still needs them after this set, but right now that comes to mind. Exclamation. It's somewhat worse passing the torch for very certain characters. Those characters, at least right now, will run this and be happy with it. We are not necessarily guaranteed to always be in a meta where e-commit draw a card on a 2/5 is a staple, but in the meta we have now, that is a lot of chain attacking and chain blocking, because there's a lot of cards that support being good at both of those things, then your limiter at that point is drawing cards. So yeah, so long as that's the situation we're in, this card's going to see a lot of play in pretty much any deck that can. If we get into a meta that's more about speed and stun, then maybe this starts getting cut from decks in favor of things that can disrupt those things. But yeah, for now, in the set 2 meta world, this card's really, really, really good. I'm going to give it a 4. I think a lot of people would give it a 5, but I've just seen, you know, Universus metas in the past where a card like this just isn't good enough for what the meta's doing. Patient Observation. So this is the 6 check with Breaker 1 is sort of describes why this card's effect is a little unexciting. I don't know if we're ever going to see a deck that's just slamming a bunch of 6 checks, but you can see, you know, Giro decks like to include 6 checks so that they can stack with specialized sound waves. So if you're an all Giro, you might play this over whatever your other 6-check options are, or this might be your only one in that symbol right now, I'm not sure. Breaker low block, +3, not great, but relevant. And yeah, the rate, so basically we have 2 5s that commit for -3 speed, so paying a momentum to get 1 less speed is not that great of a rate. But if you just aren't actually using momentum for anything, which kind of goes against the specialized sound waves plan, right? At least you're generating momentum, so it's an okay emergency button. Yeah, this is Snitch. I think it won't like go completely unplayed over the course of its existence, but it's going to be like a 1 to 2x in some weird narrow cases. I'll give it a 2. And yeah, the last one, Prone to Dry Eyes. This is going to be a big one. Discard a card, your attacks get +1 damage for the rest of the turn. If you watched when I went through the sort of teaser article, I believe I may have cited an old card that had exactly this effect. There have been cards that had... There's been a card that had this effect in the past that was very, very, very good. Just being able to turn your extra cards into... You know, if you're playing a 5-attack string and you draw on a couple extra cards, you have 8 cards, then this says those attacks get 1, 2, 3, 3, 3 damage. So you better win the game that turn, but if you're going for it, this extends your reach by 12 points in that situation. And that is like, you know, that probably means you almost an entire extra attack's worth of stats. Or, you know, give or take. It's hard to math that out because it depends on what they block and etc. But yeah, that effect, it's hard to 4x this because you're probably not going to, you know, having 2 of these doesn't actually increase your output by that much. But, you know, in return, you get a nice anti-stun ability as well, provided you're doing some flip costs. And yeah, it's going to compete for some 3-dev spots in some cases, especially on water, but maybe not so much on all or void right now, depending on what else comes out. But yeah, decks that are like, I can play strings, I can make them fast, but I need to find the damage. I mean, I could see a void Ida decks, right? Ida 2, Ida 3, maybe. I don't remember if he has void or not. Those sorts of decks that have the speed but don't really have the damage and could have some extra cards to throw away. Yeah, there are lots of decks that are going to play this. Really, it'll be hard. It's hard to build an offensive game plan around a foundation, but this is going to be a big driver for sure. I think I'm going to go ahead and 5 this as well. I think there are going to be a lot of games that end with kill turns that are powered by this card. And so yeah, the 2 Wenx's, I wound up giving 5s here. It's going to be tempting to actually get 8 of these decks. These are really, really strong for 1x's. They're not even uniques or cards that are like niche 2x attacks. So we'll see. I imagine the XR markets for these is going to be also very large because that's kind of how you get out of buying starters. You just get the XRs of these instead of getting more starters. Yeah, exciting. Overall, pretty potent kit. There's a lot of really solid numbers here on the attacks. You know, really, it's a little self-contained aside from it'll work with some of Eraserhead 1's cards and some other all-weapon stuff that's out there. In terms of Void and Water, especially Water, this is kind of its own attack package, but there's enough different attack options here that's kind of fine. You'll find, you know, a mix of attacks you can play that make for a viable attack lineup out of these. So yeah, pretty good overall. I think it's always hard to like guarantee or predict meta impact when there's also a whole new set coming out alongside of these. Even harder, you know, if you were just to insert these cards into the meta we had now, I think it would probably create, you know, a couple more viable decks that don't exist right now, especially on the Void symbol. So we'll see how it plays out in the big picture, but I have a feeling, especially with Total Erasure Binding, that we're going to see some decks running this attack package, and we're certainly going to see some decks using some of these foundations, especially Prone to Dry Eyes. Yeah, so that'll wrap it up for covering Eraserhead. If you think I hated on a card that you think is really good, you'll go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know what you think of this format. It's very quick and rambly and kind of low effort like all my stuff is, but We'll see what the runtime of this is too. I don't actually have a timer counting, but hopefully it's not too crazy long. And yeah, going to Gen Con, I'm gonna do a news update with whatever we've got tomorrow night, and then head off to Gen Con, and then after that, I assume we'll have all of Endeavor's kit. So we'll do one of these for that, and obviously we'll do, whatever there's going to be a lot of news at Gen Con, supposedly, so have a recap of that. But yeah, so I'll see you tomorrow night, Wednesday morning, for that news video, and then see a lot of you at Gen Con, probably. All right, good night.